Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy 24/7 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.
Welcome back to the Vandy 24/7 podcast. I'm Billy Derrick, coming live from Memorial Gym. We're in three different spots in Memorial right now. That's Joey Dwyer. That's Brandon Bigsby as well. I think we're going to get Chris Lee on here as well eventually. But Vanderbilt has beaten number 6 Tennessee 76-75 right here inside a raucous Memorial Gymnasium. There was a lot of orange, of course, but Vanderbilt fans got pretty loud. So, and again, that's going to happen. Tennessee fans likely going to outnumber Vanderbilt fans, but the Vanderbilt fans were loud. Students stormed the floor. Just another unbelievable moment. And it not technically, well, it is a sports calendar year with football beating Alabama. It is year 2025 now, but Vanderbilt basketball gets it done. And Mark Byington's signature win, as Joey said. And, of course, Bigsby has a piece out about Jalen Carey. Joey has a piece out about the old place, maybe healing here at Memorial. So what a day, what an afternoon it was at Memorial Gym. Joey, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts on what we witnessed tonight?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. The gym is healing a little bit. The magic is starting to maybe come back a little bit. They come back from a week with 2 losses and come out and win 2 games in a row in crunch time. And Billy, we had expressed our concerns after the Missouri game about whether we thought they knew how to win or not. And it certainly wasn't perfect at the end of the games, but 2 home games in a row that are close, and they find a win in both. And today wasn't just beating your nameless, faceless SEC opponent. You beat Tennessee. That means something around here, and it should. Vanderbilt has not beaten Tennessee very often over the last 14 matchups. They've lost 13 of them, in fact. And to put this in perspective, this corner I'm sitting on, Tyler Lawrence had a shot here a few years ago to beat Tennessee, and he called it one of the biggest shots in Vanderbilt basketball history. That's what a win against a team like this does for a program like this. And Vanderbilt today did it somewhat decisively until the very end. It felt like this game was in Vanderbilt's hands. Obviously didn't score at the end, but I thought Vanderbilt beat Tennessee at its own game today and out-rebounded Tennessee, a team that's notoriously very physical. It scored more points in the paint than Tennessee. I thought it was really sound and taking care of the ball. Carey turned it over a few times, but only turned it over 11 times against the defense that can really get after you, one of the best turnover-forcing defenses in the country. Billy, this was a heck of a win for Mark Byington, and we had known that they had significant progress up to this point, right? We didn't know if they could beat a team like this. Today, we saw it all come together for this team, and I thought this was their breakthrough, Brandon. Brandon, you're muted.
Gotta get used to the new setup, guys. But yeah, Joey, I definitely have to agree with you. This felt like one of those breakthrough moments, not just for Mark Byington and this team, but really for this Vanderbilt program. I mean, Joey, you talked about that Tyron Lawrence shot. I remember it just like it was yesterday. I was sitting right over there in Section F. It was me and my dad. And, you can debate whether it was the biggest shot in Vanderbilt program history, but really it was that shot that kind of turned the trajectory of that team's season around. Remember, that was a team that was in the bottom part of the SEC. It looked like they had no chance, really any postseason hopes, and then they went on that run where in tournament conversation just ended up missing and then made it to the NIT. And obviously still mid-January, a lot still to happen, a lot of basketball to be played, but this just feels like one of those wins, and there was someone in the press conference that compared it to football and the win versus Alabama. It can really galvanize a program. It can galvanize a fan base, and Vanderbilt fans showed up today. Obviously, there was plenty of orange in the building. That's going to happen in this game, but Vanderbilt fans, in terms of the noise and the activity, I would say Vanderbilt had probably a little bit more than Tennessee at a lot of points in this game in terms of the crowd. And for Mark Byington and this team in year number 1 in their 5th SEC game to get that sort of win against a team that, remember, was number 1 in the country just 7 days ago, that is absolutely massive, not just for resume and for confidence building, but just to say that Vanderbilt as a program is taking that step and is going into the right trajectory with Mark Byington in this group. Just a really huge galvanizing win, I think, for anyone involved with Vanderbilt athletics.
Guys, Rick Barnes had dominated Vanderbilt in his time here. He was 16-4 against Vanderbilt coming into today. He went 9-1 against Jerry Stackhouse, as we're fully aware of. 5-1 against Bryce Drew. He was 1-2 against Kevin Stallings, but that was early in the Barnes tenure. It's something you mentioned to me, Joey, and this is a good note to remember. Kevin Stallings, obviously, great career, great tenure at Vanderbilt. Bryce Drew's got cut short, but he won games too. I mean, that he had a, obviously they went 0-18, right? We all remember that, but it's not like Bryce Drew before that was some awful coach. He's doing a good job now where he is at Grand Canyon. So those tenures got off to good starts. They both, Bryce Drew and Stallings, beat Tennessee in their first meeting against Rick Barnes. Now Mark Byington has done that. And guys, there felt like coming into today, Vanderbilt had to have a lot go right for them. And it felt like a lot that they needed to go right went right. But something that I didn't think about, I didn't think Vanderbilt could out-physical Tennessee. I didn't think that was possible. I was worried about Felix Okpara down low, as well as Cade Phillips, as well as Chaz Lanier getting loose. We talked about that before the game, Brandon. If he gets loose, Vanderbilt's in trouble. But, Joey, they manhandled Tennessee at times. Devin McLaughlin on the boards. Jalen Carey had 10 rebounds. I mean, this Vanderbilt team did to Tennessee what Tennessee does to everybody. And to me, I didn't think that was possible. But now that we know it's possible, Joey, I think the outlook is brighter for this team. But they did what Tennessee does to everybody. And when teams do that to Tennessee, they lose. But you also, I said today, you got to get 3 to 4 threes out of Tyler Nickel. You got that. Jason Edwards can't have a poor shooting night. He certainly did not. He hit back-to-back threes in a huge spurt, 11-0 run early in that second half. But, Joey, the biggest thing for me tonight is Vanderbilt on the defensive end. They forced turnovers, and they scored off of their turnovers. Not a ton, but they got enough, and they out-physical Tennessee for a lot of this game. Maybe not the last 2-3 minutes. They didn't score for about the last 4 minutes of the game. But, Joey, for a lot of this game, they out-physical Tennessee, and I think that was a huge key tonight.
That says something about this team, Billy. It's plain and simple. It says that this team can play with the big boys. They can play with grown-up teams, and I thought Vanderbilt grew up a lot tonight. It had a lot of guys who grew up. We had been waiting all year for this team to have at least a mini breakthrough. I think you look at it and say, man, if they hit a few more shots in this game, that's their best game of the year. But they really hadn't had, like you said, a signature performance. And I thought they did that today, not only because of the win, but the way they did it, like you said, out-physicaling Tennessee, out-rebounding Tennessee, taking care of the ball against a defense that turns everybody over and makes everybody look bad. They scored more points on Tennessee than anybody did this year, including Florida, who beat it by 30. I think that says something about this team, and it doesn't just say that they play with a lot of pace. It says that this team has some ability to go and beat some teams that people think it shouldn't. And to get to the NCAA tournament, you got to win a few games like this. Vanderbilt did that today, and I think it really set itself up well. Also, though, it had a lot of guys grow up. Jalen Carey really stepped up today, played one of his best games at Vanderbilt. We were talking about early in the game, he had those 2 turnovers off his foot, dribbled one of them out of bounds, dribbled one of them, and it went the other way. And Jalen Carey could have folded there. It could have been a non-factor, but instead went 5 for 6, had 14 points. I thought Vanderbilt had some real moments late in the game. Jason Edwards went on that huge stretch, and we were waiting for a stretch like that too, right? We were waiting for Tyler Nickel to hit a few big shots, waiting for Jason Edwards to just catch fire. Everything that Vanderbilt needed to happen tonight happened, and that says to me that this might not just be a flash in the pan. That says to me that they can go win some games moving forward, and they may be a better team than even their numbers and their record indicate, Brandon.
Yeah, and Joey, when you said that about Vanderbilt thinking that this could maybe be something they can build off of, I mean, I instantly thought of a quote that Mark Byington said after the game where he said he told his team, I think we're on to something here. If we can play this way consistently, I think we're on to something. And I think that today we saw Vanderbilt do a lot of the things that they've struggled with a little bit better. The physicality of Tennessee didn't bother them. They rebounded really well. I think they had a few stretches defensively where they got some missed rotations, especially early on in the game. Tennessee had a lot of open looks from three, but you saw that when Vanderbilt got on that run and we're up by 10, a lot of it came from really strong defensive possessions, slowing down Zakai Ziegler, slowing down Chaz Lanier, and even if they hit some tough shots, it's going to happen, making them really earn those looks, and if they hit it, they hit it. And then being able to find buckets on the other end. I mean, something else you mentioned, Joey, that I thought was a really good point was that we saw a lot of players, I think, that have either struggled or have caught a lot of flack really step up and have a massive, massive part of this game today. I think the one play that really arguably won this game for Vanderbilt that no one's talked about was Tyler Nichols' 4-point play right at the end of the half.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt wins this game by 1. He hits the tough three, gets fouled, and drills the free throw on the other end. We were talking just a few days ago about how Tyler Nickel had really struggled up to this point, other than a game or two in Charleston. He stepped up. Jalen Carey with a double-double. That was his first double-double since the season opener against Maryland Eastern Shore. I mean, we saw a lot of guys for this Vanderbilt team really elevate their game, it feels like, today, and it was really a committee. It wasn't just Jason Edwards. It wasn't just A.J. Hogarth. It wasn't just Devin McLaughlin. It really took a committee for his Vanderbilt team to come in. I mean, Chris Magnon, despite having 4 fouls when he was in, was really, really effective out there. MJ Collins, I thought, despite not having a great scoring night, was really good and gave Tennessee some struggles at times with his defensive work. I mean, this was such a complete performance from Vanderbilt, and I tweeted this during the game. It was around late first half. This looks like the Vanderbilt team that when we were talking about what can they look like when they're at their best, when they can be a scary team, they showed a lot of those things that make you say, okay, if they can just get it clicking, if they can find that consistency together as a team, this may be a team that you don't want to see over the next couple of months.
A couple big moments late. Obviously, Chris Magnon's block was massive, and that was against Chaz Lanier. You know, that was with about 11 seconds left. Tennessee gets a pretty good look. You have your best player, your go-to guy, one-on-one with Chris Magnon. Magnon blocks it. Vanderbilt, of course, gets the ball back. Tanner misses the free throw, and at that point, Tennessee, and then they foul. Tanner fouls, or not Tanner. Magnon foul. Magnon fouls Lanier, and Lanier goes to the line for. Was that a 1-and-1, Joey? Okay. I thought in the moment that might have been 2, but that was a 1-and-1 for Lanier. Hits the first, misses the second, and then Edwards saves it. And that's a big moment. And that there's some pictures going around Twitter how close Edwards was to stepping out of bounds. Luckily, he saved it. But if that ball, if Edwards is out of bounds there, 0.9 seconds, a minute left for Tennessee with for a lob attempt there. So again, Magnon's block. Obviously, it's disappointing with Tanner missing the free throw. But Edwards talked about it after the game. Hey, there's nothing to hold your head down about, right? Tanner was big in this game defensively on Ziegler. I thought at a lot of points, and then Edwards saving it. And pandemonium in Memorial. And again, if you guys have comments and questions, feel free to fire away. We do have a couple questions. We'll try to get to those throughout. Brandon, you'll like this. And Joey, I know you remember this. The last foul gave me horror flashbacks to the NCAA tournament game against Northwestern, Vandy Dandy, Matthew Fisher Davis. That was eerily similar. I think there was a little bit more time left on the clock there, Brandon, but not the smartest foul there from Magnon. It didn't end up hurting Vanderbilt. And then Matthew chimes in, UT shot nearly 50% from 3 and 50% from the floor, and Vandy still won. like this was not a poor shooting night from Tennessee. They hit 10 threes. Vanderbilt had 8 of their own, but they were also almost 50% from the field, Joey. So, I mean, this wasn't like Alabama. We talked about that a lot. It wasn't a fluke. This was not a fluke either from this Vanderbilt team. Tennessee shot the ball well, but Vanderbilt out-rebounded them. That was a key. Byington said before the game, we out-rebounded them, we win. And they did it, Joey. But again, this wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a bad shooting night for Tennessee. I want people to remember that.
Yeah, and I thought Vanderbilt had so many signature moments too, where they were hitting tough shots. They were making shots that, for a lot of the season, weren't going in. I thought it was just a huge, huge performance, a gutsy performance from a lot of guys that really needed one. Jason Edwards tonight mentioned that there have been some games that throughout the year he was disappointed with. He's gone through a tough stretch of basketball. Didn't make the play late against Missouri. Had 0 points the game before that against Mississippi State. Jason Edwards had his moment in the sun tonight, and I thought Vanderbilt did as well. We mentioned the gym healing a little bit, and I kind of want to elaborate on that. Bill, you remember this pretty vividly, I'm sure. Last year here when they played Tennessee, I thought was one of the most jarring games that I've been at here. You walk in, and it's 75% Tennessee fans at least. You've got Vanderbilt fans with paper bags on their heads. You've got fans singing Rocky Top at the end of the game. Tennessee running Vanderbilt off the court in the second half. Jerry Stackhouse getting booed. This gym was a shell of itself this time a year ago. Tonight, it wasn't back to its normal form. It wasn't when Vanderbilt beat Tennessee a long time ago, and it was on ESPN, the video that circulates around Twitter all the time. But it was something. And this gym has been starved for something. His fan base has been starved for something. And they deserved a game like this. Brandon, I know you've been around the program for a long time. I think you probably count the wins like this on your hand that Vanderbilt has had over the last 5 or 6 years that have really inspired you, have really made you think that, man, this team could do something, and this team is worth investing in, this team's worth getting excited about. This wasn't a fluky upset. This wasn't a we're down, we've lost 5 SEC games in a row, and we're just trying to play spoiler. Vanderbilt's fighting for something here, and it did that tonight, and I think this fan base really deserved something like this, and Mark Byington even mentioned it. When you win like this, more people start to come, and Brandon, I think that's a big thing too.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I almost wanted to compare it a little bit to that Alabama game in October. And, you know, it's funny because after the game, Jason Edwards was talking about this was the second time he's experienced a crowd storming at Vanderbilt because he and some of the basketball players were a part of the field storming when Vanderbilt beat Alabama. And Mark Byington kind of looked at him and said, I didn't know you guys were there for that, kind of in a joking manner, which was arguably my favorite quote of that entire press conference. But, I mean, these are the wins. This is one of those wins where if you can build on this, it'll bring people back in. I feel like a lot of the talk, especially over the last couple of weeks with the first 2 SEC games, is that you can tell there's a thirst for athletics. There's a thirst for success here with Vanderbilt. I mean, the first 2 games, the student turnout was, I think, phenomenal. I mean, there wasn't an empty seat in the student section today. Yeah. There wasn't an empty seat against Mississippi State. It was rather filled out against South Carolina. It was a 5 p.m. afternoon tip-off where you have kids just getting out of class. And it feels like if you want fans to come outside of the students, you want some of those neutrals to come within the city to check this team out, get them invested, wins like this can do that. And it's not just a win to get a win. It's one thing to have an upset win like 2019 Vanderbilt almost beat number 1 Tennessee, or even a couple of years ago when Vanderbilt won that Tennessee game with Jerry Stackhouse. Vanderbilt wasn't seen as a serious threat. They got there at the end of the year, but they weren't there. This is a team that's now 15-3 and has themselves in the NCAA tournament field potentially as of now. People will buy into that. People will invest in that. It's a product worth watching. It looks like a program that's on a trajectory that's worth investing in and spending your time into. A win like this is big enough for the now, but these are the wins that really can catapult and get fans excited and get people wanting to come into this program and invest in it and watch this team play. I'm really, really excited to see how the next game is because it's kind of comparable. Kentucky coming into town, obviously great traveling fan base, typically a lot of blue, a lot of go big blue chants, kind of a 70-30 ratio. I think you could maybe see a lot more Vanderbilt fans in the building potentially now, and it's sold out already, so we'll see how much things change. But I think this is a win that can potentially do even more for Vanderbilt than a lot of the wins in the past. I can't really think of another game, at least in my time, that could potentially move Vanderbilt further in terms of where they want to get as a program if they capitalize on it than this win today can.
I'm glad we're talking about this because this matters. But like the game was great, right? The Magnon block, the Edwards save, Nichols 3-pointers. The guy they played phenomenal. They were great on both sides of the ball. But think about this last athletic year, the last one we covered, Joe. Not this year. The last athletic year we covered. Vanderbilt basketball lost to Presbyterian to start the season at home, and that was one of the worst basketball seasons in Vanderbilt history, at least optic-wise, PR-wise, all of it. And then you see a football season that we saw prior to that, right? The football season that was 2-10. The baseball team lost in a regional to High Point. Like that will go down as one of the worst athletic years and maybe the worst athletic year between the 3 main sports in Vanderbilt history. But you think to this one, it started with a football win over Alabama for the first time since '84, I think it was. And that sent shockwaves across the country. They finish a winning season 7-6, a bowl win over Georgia Tech. This basketball season, right? They're 15-3. Like you said, Brandon, 3 SEC wins. You knock off a top 10 Tennessee team at home. There is so much momentum with this athletic department, and it feels like they're cashing in, right? The way Carey and Edwards talked about that Alabama game, they were both there. There's momentum. There's connectedness within this athletic department for the first time in a long time. They invested. Guys, they invested. The football team invested to get Pavia and all those transfers. Look at what Mark Byington did, getting Edwards and Hogard and all the transfers. It's a transfer team. They invested. They paid. They spent money. This is what you get. This is what you get when you enter into the modern age of college athletics. And I think that's a huge talking point right now. We're going to talk a lot about this game and the rest of the season for this basketball team. But, Joey, I think this basketball win is as much about the athletic department as a whole right now. Barton Simmons tweeted, "Come to Vandy. You storm fields and courts on the weekends." Right? This is a fun place to go if you're a student. If you're, no matter where you live in the country, you're thinking about maybe you want to go to an SEC school. The way Vanderbilt is right now, they knock off you knock off Alabama, you knock off Tennessee. I know those are just 2 specific games, but it's fun. It's fun for the fans. Jelly Roll was here tonight. I mean, who would have thought that? He was throwing up the VU sign with Candace Lee, J.C. Latham from the Tennessee Titans. The students are invested. The players and the coaches are invested. They're all here. They're all in Memorial. I think the next step, like you said, Brandon, is getting those sidewalk fans, getting new fans, right? We know Vanderbilt has a solid fan base. It's small outside of the students right now. But wins like this bring people back. It's fun. I mean, how fun is this to you knock off Tennessee and, if you want to go down to Broadway or Midtown, like Nashville is a place where people want to see entertainment, but also winning games. And Joey, Vanderbilt is one of the schools at the top of the country having the most fun right now if you're a Vandy fan, or especially if you're a student, right? I mean, you just stormed another court. And again, I don't want to get too high right now, but this win is not a coincidence with the momentum that this athletic department has created.
Yeah, the basketball turnaround in specific is just remarkable. 9-23 last year, a completely new roster. Like we mentioned, Brandon, a couple weeks ago, our expectations were not NCAA tournament. It was not beat Tennessee. Mark Byington came in and changed the expectation around this program. And he talked about, we don't want to lose. We want to rebuild, or we don't want to rebuild. We want to win right away. And anything less than this, in his eyes, would have been a failure. And them losing some games is a failure. That is a complete 180 from where they were a year ago, where they were just starved for a win. And this fan base has been starved for a consistent winner for so long. It finally looks like they have a chance at having a winner. And I think tonight tells you that maybe that's a possibility. They're 15-3. This is another quad 1 win on their resume. They've got 2 of them now. That's a pretty freaking good NCAA tournament resume at this point. And it's not – the objective is not just to beat Tennessee, right? This isn't Lipscomb Belmont where it defines your season. This is a place where you've got to go to the NCAA tournament for it to be a successful year. And for the first time in a long time, it looks like Vanderbilt's on that track. You mentioned that Tennessee game a few years ago. It has kind of a similar arc to this, where they go and play Ole Miss and kind of lay up a stinker but win, and then they come to play Tennessee and they win in dramatic fashion. That turned their season around back then. They don't need their season to be turned around right now, though. Maybe this catapults them forward. This could be a complete turning point because I don't think they've played their best basketball yet. But also, man, you look at that comparison and you say, that Stackhouse team was dead in the water at that point when they won that game, and that gave them life. This team already had life, and they had life abundantly. And now, man, you can dream a little bit, Brandon.
Yeah, I think you have reason to believe again. And I think that that's really been what a lot of Vanderbilt fans, really from students to alumni to just Vanderbilt fans globally, have been kind of looking for, I think, for a long time now, is just give a reason to believe. Give me a reason to think that there's a reason to invest, and there's a reason to get excited. And there's been glimmers here and there, kind of small hopes. You talk about football, the 2022 season where Vanderbilt kind of got on a little bit of a run. They beat Kentucky and Florida, and then they went 5-7. You thought, oh, next year might be the year. And then they have one of the worst seasons that they've had. And then you go back to the 2 NIT years with Jerry Stackhouse and those guys. Are like, okay, maybe this is the year, and then it doesn't happen. It feels like now is it's the most tangible feeling of belief that I think Vanderbilt, not just from a basketball perspective, but from an athletics perspective, has really been able to feel. And, Joey, we talked about this after the South Carolina game a few nights ago, but this Tennessee game, there's something about it in this gym year in and year out to where doesn't really matter how talented or lack of talent either team is. It always seems to be close. I mean, you go back to 2019, it took 23 Grant Williams free throws for number 1 Tennessee to beat Vanderbilt, who went 0-18 with Bryce Drew in the SEC, to win that game in overtime. I mean, there's just something about this game year in, year out. And obviously this game, like you mentioned, Joey, doesn't define their season by any stretch. There's still a lot to go. But you look at Vanderbilt now, even just past this game, they're sitting at 15-3. They're 3-2 in the SEC. I mean, we've been talking about for the last few months with how the SEC is. If you get 8 wins in this conference, you're a lock. Vanderbilt is 5 wins away from likely punching their ticket pretty much into the NCAA tournament. And that's going to be tough to do. I mean, their next 2 games are Alabama and Kentucky, who are 2 top 10 teams. That's not going to be an easy task. You still got to play Auburn. You still got to play Ole Miss. You're going to see Tennessee and Knoxville again in a few weeks. But there is a genuine opportunity for Vanderbilt and Mark Byington, this team, to do something and create something really special. And that's not something that I think that many Vanderbilt fans have even felt for the first. I mean, even the last 2 tournament appearances, 2017, Vanderbilt was kind of a middling team that made the tournament, was a 9 seed, lost their first game. 2016, they came in ranked in the top 25, kind of fell off and faltered non-conference, were barely a bubble team, and were one of the last 4 in, lost in the first 4. So this is really the first time, I think, that Vanderbilt, just as a team and as a program, set themselves up in position to say, we can compete and we're playing for something and can believe in for something game in, game out, the rest of the way, all the way up into March.
All right, we've all been very positive, as we should. Vanderbilt just beat the top 10 team of the country. But, guys, we got to talk about that last 3 minutes, 48 seconds. That was – and I didn't know that. Joey, we talked about it. We went down lower for the last 2 minutes of the game. And, because so we had to walk down. We missed a good bit of the 3 and a half to 2 minute stretch. So
don't tell them that, Billy.
But that's why but that's why we were slightly unaware of that. Like, we had talked and I was like, oh, they haven't – I know, we know they haven't scored for the last minute and a half or so, but I couldn't believe they didn't score the last 3 minutes, 48 seconds of this game. And Byington, after the game, talked about how he knew that Jason Edwards had a good look and thought that was going to go in. I thought that was going to go in as well. That was a really good look. There was a point even later around the minute and a half mark, I think, where Nickel had it on the left wing and had Edwards for a layup if he wanted to. I don't think he wanted to commit a turnover. So obviously they got, I don't know if I want to say complacent, but they weren't as aggressive. But credit Tennessee. They were pressing full court. They ended up scoring on their end. But we got to talk about that. Like, what happened in that last 3:48, Joey? And again, we may not have seen all of it, but again, that's got to improve because you're not going to close out a team like Alabama playing like that for the last almost 4 minutes of the game. You're not going to beat Kentucky. You may not beat a lot of these SEC teams, maybe any of the teams on your schedule, right? Unless you're at home and you get some magic, right? They needed some magic and the crowd needed to pull them through, but that's got to get better. They got to clean that up, Joey, and I think they need to stay aggressive more than they did. They just missed shots, right? Hogard missed an open 3, Edwards missed an open 3, but I think even Byington would probably tell you this, that maybe call another set or two, take another shot or two that you didn't take, whatever it is. I think that's got to get cleaned up down the stretch here, and it probably will. But we could be talking about a loss very easily right now, and that last 3:48 would have been the reason why. That's got to get better.
Yeah, I think it was an example of it was a team early in non-conference play that I thought knew how to win. Just because they had done it a little bit in non-conference play. I kind of backed off that the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure they fully know how to win, and I kind of thought that today as well. They obviously made the big play. Chris Magnon, the hero. Man, oh man, Chris Magnon. What a performance at the end of the game there by him. It looked like they were dead. And it's kind of crazy how 2 games in a row, it's Devin McLaughlin with the huge block in South Carolina and then Chris Magnon. I'm not sure offensively they know how to win at the end of games yet. And that concerns me a tiny bit, honestly, but who cares tonight? Tonight is the Tennessee game, and Billy, I think it's valid to bring it up, but also man, they find a way to win against Tennessee. You can't be super worried at that point. I think they got good looks, and they've gotten good looks at the end of games. They got the looks. They got the looks. But man, I think there's still a bit of room for them to go in terms of learning how to win. And for the Stackhouse teams, especially the one that beat Tennessee, this was the game that turned it. They learned how to win because they beat Tennessee in that game. And I wonder if they have some confidence at the end of the games after this week, where not only beating Tennessee today, but you beat South Carolina early in the week. You say, man, may we know how to win a little bit. Maybe we can handle these adverse situations, even though we haven't been together for a super long time. Even though we don't know how to play like Alabama plays, or maybe we don't have the talent that those type of teams have, but we've beat Tennessee late in the game. We've beat South Carolina late in the game. We weren't at our best. And obviously they had some breaks go their way in those games, but Brandon, they're learning how to win slowly but surely, and I thought today was a huge step in that regard.
Yeah, and I'm going to try and be brief because the boss man has joined us, obviously, so I want to make sure we get his thoughts on everything. But, I think the one thing, just kind of hearing both you and Billy and what you were talking about, I don't think you can throw away, obviously, that last 358, but I think the number one thing that comes to mind is just how much one or two plays can completely flip the narrative of what we talk about. Because if Chaz Lanier hits that free throw, or if Chris Mannion doesn't get that block, and this game goes into overtime, momentum is a very real thing. And I don't know if I can say confidently that Vanderbilt plays another 5 minutes without thinking about that last 4 minute stretch to where they potentially would have blown that game. And it was kind of reminding me of 2022 Florida, where Florida came in the year. It was that team with Quasi Reeves. Vanderbilt was up by, I think, 8 to 10 points with around the same amount of time left. And Vanderbilt ended up losing that game on a late shot from, I believe it was Quasi Reeves with Florida, where they had Castleton and all those guys. And it was kind of similar to that, only in the different aspect to where this time Vanderbilt was able to make that one play. They caught a break, obviously, with Lanier missing that free throw. Jason Edwards used all 6'1" of them to sky up and kind of tip that ball away and not allow Tennessee to get that second chance slip to win the game, and they were able to do so. And that feels like a game that I think that Vanderbilt of the last few years, it feels like that ends up in, same old Vanderbilt. They lose that game, they collapse, they have an opportunity to get all this traction, to build all this momentum, to make a statement, and they threw it away. That wasn't the case today. They were able to find a way. It may have not been the prettiest way, but they were able to find a way. And for the most part, they did it through their own fruition. They didn't have to rely on Tennessee, screwing something up or making a mistake outside of that free throw at the end. Vanderbilt found a way to win this game. Tennessee didn't find a way to lose it.
And we found a way to get Chris Lee in here, the boss man, after the walk with Oreo. Chris, describe what you witnessed. I mean, that's a win that hasn't happened in a long time at Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a lot of indication that, okay, this thing's going in the right direction. And what Mark Byington has done, obviously, has been incredible. Just your reaction to what you saw.
Yeah, I want to hit on 2 or 3 things. The on-court stuff today. I thought Chris Mannion was huge for them. Those were 13 huge minutes. I think he was plus 10 in the first half. Had the block at the end. Jason Edwards was doing Jason Edwards things like they need done again. Jalen Carey was terrific. I think that's 2 out of 4 really good games in the league. And that's where I had really started to kind of worry about them. And a couple things like, okay, is Edwards good enough to do this against the elite teams? Today he was. Do they have enough inside against teams that are really physical and tough-minded? And today was a great litmus test. And I mean, it's just weird how little Devin McLaughlin just wasn't as big a factor today. I'm going to look at the box score: 8 points, 28 minutes, 2 rebounds, plus minus of 1. That's because Carey was so good today. Even though he did have a plus minus of minus 7, I wouldn't have thought that. But he goes 14 and 10. All these individual guys, Mannion, Carey, Edwards, they don't win if any of them is a little less what they were today. And look at Tennessee. You could say, well, they fell behind. They missed the 3 throw. Okay, fine. If you tell me Tennessee comes in here and shoots 10 of 21 from 3, and Lanier breaks out of a shooting slump, goes 4 for 6 from 3, scores 11 points, leads the team. I'm saying the chances they're going to win aren't big. So, people could say, well, Lanier missed the free throw, whatever. Tennessee played pretty well offensively. I mean,
Yep.
I feel like Zakai Ziegler's still throwing up, flipping up alley-oops to Akpar and those guys, and they're still throwing down dunks. I mean, I thought they got a pretty good shot from Tennessee today. I know that, Vanderbilt kind of took control. We were in the press conference. We heard Rick Barnes talk about they didn't like the end of the half. Okay, but he's got some points. I don't think they caught Tennessee's A game, but Tennessee didn't make it easy for them for the way they shot. Number two, I think we had been sitting there going, okay, the season has been nice, right? Just getting to 14 wins coming into today. You can look back at some of the wins. They beat a lot of bad teams. I get that. Previous coach lost to a lot of bad teams too. They won a lot of their in-the-middle games. They had a shot against Missouri. But today was a different test. I mean, this is the team that 2 weeks ago was number one in the country, guys. This is the team that going into today was going to be a one seed if you picked the NCAA tournament field. This is a team that has won a ton of games under Rick Barnes in environments like today. They did this in front of a crowd that I thought was probably 50-50. I thought the Vanderbilt fans were probably louder, but man, when I tried to survey the crowd and look all around, and I couldn't tell you who's got more people in the building. If you looked at the student section, it looked overwhelmingly Vandy. It was majority Tennessee everywhere else, including like when you guys walked. I don't know if you guys noticed when you walked out of the press box, that upper level was probably 90% Tennessee.
Yeah. On
the sideline on the chairback side. So a lot of things going against them today, and they still won the game, which is big. And I was thinking while I was walking, Oreo, like significance of this, right? And it's too early to tell. Like if they go and lose 10 in a row, the season's going nowhere. By the way, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just playing all sides of it. Then we can look back and how much did it mean? Okay, it's always big when you beat Tennessee. It was a fun day, but maybe there's no more to it than that. This to me feels different.
Yeah.
This to me feels like we've been saying, okay, this is great what they've done so far. I would give Mark Byington an A. And by the way, Rick Barnes brought up something I hear brought up a lot of places. Like it is really hard to win and bring in that many new faces and win right away. It's hard if you're Kentucky. It's hard if you're anybody. To flip that much of your roster and have success. Teams don't do that often. I mean, teams that flip that many players almost never go to the NCAA tournament and do anything. So, look, we are mid-January, don't know how this is going to end, but I'm just telling you how it feels to me. I think you can make the argument this is their most significant win since 2011. I think that argument is there, and that would be probably – when they beat Kentucky in the SEC tournament championship. And I'm not usually a big fan of SEC tournament championships. Some teams are maybe there to play, some teams aren't, but that was a milepost for me because they had played Kentucky twice that year and they didn't win either of them, but they were right there. And that was like an all-time great Kentucky team. That was not only a national championship team, that was a team that was probably the best team in the country going in the tournament and then won the tournament. To me today was a milepost because you beat a team that has been at the top of the hill very recently. Again, was going to be a one seed. And you did it where you've got a chance to stack wins of significance on top of it behind this. Let's face it, Dave, if they pick the bracket today, they're in the tournament.
Yeah.
Probably is a 11 10. Seed, maybe a 10 seed. Who knows? I don't know what else happened today. But to me, right now, this feels like the biggest win they've had in about 14 years.
By the way, Drake is beating up on Indiana State right now, 62-46 as well. Mississippi State all over Ole Miss. Obviously, Missouri's up big on Arkansas. So a lot of SEC action, and it's going to get harder for Vanderbilt down the stretch here. I want to pose a question as we wrap up here because we've been going for about 40 minutes, and thanks for all the comments and questions. What did you learn about this Vanderbilt team tonight? Joey, I'll start with you. and then I'll get to what I learned a little bit later. But and it could be one thing, it could be multiple. But what did tonight in this win over Tennessee? What did you learn about this Vanderbilt team?
I learned that they can do it, and it's as simple as that. They can make the shots when they need to against a really good team. They can play physically with a team that's really physical. They can take care of the ball against a defense that swarms you. All season long, we had talked about, man, what happens when you play at Tennessee? What happens when you play at Kentucky? What happens when you play in Auburn? They played Tennessee, and they did what they've always done. And I thought that was a huge, huge testament to what they have, because we had looked at their resume and talked about, got a bunch of nice wins. They did what they're supposed to in games they're supposed to win. They've won 1 or 2 games that should have been in the balance. And they've also lost some games they shouldn't on the road, or they lost to Mississippi State pretty handily at home. But tonight, it wasn't that same story. They did what we always kind of doubted they could do against a team that everybody in the country doubted that they could beat. And I think that says a lot about what they have. That says a lot about what they can do moving forward. And also it says a lot about their NCAA tournament hopes, because we had kind of written off that they could be more than just a bubble team. Now, this opens up a world of possibilities for them, that they could not, maybe not just be a bubble team, but they could go and win some more games than we think they can win. And I still think they probably end up as a bubble team, but it opens the doors to a lot of things once you see that they have a great team placed in front of them, and a team that can try to get you out of your element and do things completely differently than you can do them. And they went and beat that team. Brandon, I think all that's a big testament to just what they have. And I think they proved a lot of things tonight that maybe we didn't fully know. We had seen glimpses of, but all in all, they broke through tonight. And, man, that is a positive indicator for their future.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar to what you said, Joey, but I'll word it a little bit differently. I think that what I've learned with this team today is that all the hypotheticals that we've used in this team don't really feel so hypothetical anymore. I mean, from the tournament talks to, oh, if this team can get it going, they can be scary. Oh, if they can hit shots. Oh, if they can rebound. It feels like as much as we have complimented and kind of, built up this team throughout the year, there's always been a well, if. It feels like a lot of the well ifs before today, we hadn't really seen that tangible progress, that it was really there. A lot of it felt more hypothetical than anything. Today we saw it. It was always, well, Vanderbilt can be in that tournament conversation if they can prove they can be a high-end team. They did that today. Oh, if Vanderbilt can find their shooting, they did that today. If they can rebound, if they can match with these SEC teams physically, we know that Vanderbilt is capable of doing that now. It was a lot of if, a lot of hypothetical that felt like separating what Vanderbilt is aiming for and where they have been, I think, really all season. I think we've seen today that it is there, it is in them, and they have the ability to do it, and not just do it a season down the line. They have the ability to do it now. And I think that that's something that we saw. Again, this is a team that, as Chris said, was just 7 days ago ranked number 1 in the country. If they were picking the bracket today, there's a good chance Tennessee is a 1 seed or a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. This is one of the best teams in the country, and they didn't just go out and win in some fluky fashion. They went out and played toe-to-toe with a deep, talented Rick Barnes team, as you could argue, is more talented, deeper, and more physical than they are. And again, shot the lights out of the gym. They shot just under 50% from 3, and Vanderbilt, despite blowing a 10-point lead nearly at home, were able to lock in and win that game. It feels like a lot of the hypothetical that we felt about this team for the last 3 months, we know that it's there now. We know that it exists. Now the question is, can they hone that in and prove that they can do it on a consistent basis?
Yeah, it feels like proof of concept. I have an enormous amount of respect for Rick Barnes and what he's built. They run. I know they have not been to the mountaintop that fan base wants. They want Final Fours. They want whatever. My goodness, he has been consistent. They have an identity that they replicate every single year. They have a winning culture. They have winning players. They have guys that have been there and won a ton of games. Zakai Ziegler, chief among them. Again, we don't know what comes next, but today they go and beat that team. They beat a team that I thought was a bad matchup for them in a lot of ways. It's proof of concept. Again, don't know how this is going to end, but I look at what Mark Byington has done in such a short amount of time. It's amazing. And they went today and they beat, and I say this with all due respect, they kind of beat a bully, a team that's had the upper hand on them in the series, a team that is physical, a team that is tough, a team that is not going to back down from anybody. And they did it getting a breakout game from Jalen Carey, a guy we thought could be a big player for them, but has been kind of disappointing. And frankly, even in the first half today, kicked a couple of balls away. To come back from that, to have the kind of game that he had today, just guys all over the floor playing roles for them. Look, if they string wins together, he is going to bring in better players than he's got. He's going to recruit players a notch or two higher than what he's got on the roster. But to do it with what he's got in such a short time to rebuild it, super impressive. And the other thing is, I think maybe that's the start of building back the fan base. They play Kentucky a week from today, and what'll be a big game, and what will be a fan base that'll travel. Maybe you can find a little bit of a way to get a few more people in your building between now and then, because that's something you're going to have to build too. But today was proof of concept for people who were looking to buy in.
I learned that this is a group of winners, that, these guys came here to win. They came here to win games. Byington came here to win games. He said it wasn't a rebuild. And this comment from Justin is a really good point. It almost feels like we've imported winners that don't have the same old Vandy mentality in both football and basketball. You bring in Pavia. You bring in Fontenette. In basketball, you bring in Edwards and Hogard. They don't know about Vanderbilt. They don't. I mean, I'm sure they know that, Vanderbilt has struggled in basketball the last 5-6 years, of course, under Stackhouse. But, in the rivalry, right? These guys came to play. Like Chris Magnon, I mean, the energy, and they were engaging with the fans. That's something you didn't see a ton under Stackhouse. This tonight, I think, represents what you're going to see consistently under Byington, especially at home. It's going to be fun. It's a fun product to watch. It's a fun style of basketball. I learned that this is a group of winners, and that night in, night out, they'll give it their best. We'll see what they do on Tuesday night. That's going to be a tough game in Tuscaloosa. Alabama themselves is coming off a big, high emotional road win at Kentucky. So that could be a little bit of a rubber meets the road. Alabama's really good at home, and of course we'll talk about that. But 73 live viewers right now, guys, too. So good momentum for us with Vandy 24/7. Obviously, big time momentum with Vanderbilt, and about a 50-minute post-game reaction. So appreciate all of you guys hopping in. I'm going to get to the Wash House read because we have to. We got to pay the bills here. Wash House is the presenting sponsor for basketball season. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. All right, real quick, around the room, final parting thoughts. I know we got Alabama on Tuesday, but Joey, final parting thoughts after a fun night for Vanderbilt fans.
Yeah, I think we've said a lot of it, but John Fanta put it well in a tweet just now. Mark Byington was a program-changing hire for Vanderbilt, he said. And you look at this program where it was a year ago when, honestly, at times we were dreading coming here. And we were seeing fans with paper bags on their heads at this game. We were seeing people laughing at the product they were putting on the floor. We were seeing Tennessee fans writing stuff all over Vandy's campus about how Tennessee owns Vanderbilt, things along those lines. What a difference a year makes. Vanderbilt is in a completely different spot. And, again, it just goes back to what Mark Byington said a long time ago. The standard we had thought was, well, maybe they show some positive trajectory in year one, and that'd be a success. Mark Byington raised the standard, and it wasn't just talk. He's lived up to it, and they have really found a way to catapult themselves forward. A heck of a win for Mark Byington. And to this point, his signature win, Jerry Stackhouse took 8 tries to beat this team. No other coach besides Kevin Stallings, since Kevin Stallings, has beat Tennessee in their first time. And Mark Byington did it in an era where Tennessee is better than what they have been in the last couple of coaching tenures. That is a heck of a stat. And I think if you're looking for a reason to think Mark Byington's the guy to lead this program forward, you look today and you point at what he did today. He said on Thursday, man, I don't know how we're going to score on them. I got to figure it out. Well, Vanderbilt figured it out, and I think it's figured out a lot about itself, and this program has really taken a step forward. Like we said, you just think back to a year ago and how things have changed. Why can't they change even more in a year? I thought Chris made a great point, and this will be a topic for the offseason, but they'll get better players next year. He's doing this with a roster that he had to construct in like a month, and they worked tirelessly to do it. I think this staff has really put their head down and worked and hasn't really put up with any nonsense, and it's starting to pay off for him. So, again, just a signature win for Mark Byington, and one that this program, the fans deserved, and they finally got it, Brandon.
Yeah, I think my just parting thoughts is Vanderbilt basketball feels as legitimate as I think it has in terms of where it is right now and where it could potentially go, maybe since some of those Stallings years. I mean, obviously, I know Bryce Drew had that second and third year. There was a lot of hype with that recruiting class with Garland and Chateau and Naismith, and they had Saban Lee and all those guys, but there wasn't any tangible proof that it was going to be something. There was hope, I think, that maybe Jerry Stackhouse could get them there as they started to kind of slowly but surely build their way up. But this feels like Vanderbilt is legitimizing themselves as a program. And a lot of times it takes a legitimizing win against the program and a team that isn't just having a one-off year, but a team that's been established. I mean, Tennessee, if you look across the country, have been one of the most consistently elite basketball programs that you can go to. I mean, Rick Barnes has had this team in tournament after tournament. They've been ranked for how many ever years in a row now. This is one of the marks of consistency, of excellence, not just in the SEC, but on the national level. And Joey, you referenced that Fanta tweet. Rothstein has tweeted about how Vanderbilt has really turned things around with Mark Byington and all these other national analysts. Vanderbilt's not just getting attention because, oh, look at Vanderbilt. That's a cute, cool story. Vanderbilt's getting attention because they are tangibly building something, and they're building it the right way. And I don't think any of us thought it was going to be this quick, especially with how drastic of a teardown it was. But yet here they are, 15-3, a massive win, not just a massive win for the resume, but again, beating one of the most legitimized programs in the country and one of the most consistent programs in the country since Rick Barnes has been the head coach there. I think that does wonders for not just your season, but where your program is and the belief of what this program can be under this administration.
I'm glad you guys brought that. I listen to a lot of national basketball media coverage just to try to get a grasp on everything that's going on in a thumbnail so I can do all the stuff we're doing. I'm not keeping score when they're mentioned or not mentioned on stuff. So maybe I've not heard them be a talking point on anything in a long time.
Other than the SEC networks a little bit this year.
Right. And other than like the last time Vanderbilt really got any attention is when they fired Bryce Drew. And it's because you had all the people saying, they shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I don't know, Bryce. I'm skeptical that Bryce would have ever won here, but I sure as heck wouldn't have fired him to make the move that they've made next. They've been kind of paying the price for that for a while. When you tune into your podcasts on Sunday or Monday, they're probably going to get a mention for the first time in a while. I don't think it's going to be the lead story, but they've fallen that much off the radar of relevance. That's a step. You know, the next thing is just try to string together enough wins to get to an NCAA tournament. If you do that, that's the next one. But it's the biggest moment they've had for the program. Again, I would argue probably since 2011.
And after the court storming, Byington didn't run in with the students. You know, he wasn't, hey, look at me, look at what I just did. He found his officer and went right into the locker room.
Yeah.
He said, and probably started at the Alabama film. Like, that's the guy Vanderbilt has in their coaching seat, and they're lucky, right? Great hire, phenomenal hire. But that's who he is, and that says a lot about him. He's done it a long time. He's coached a lot. He brought in winners, and they're not scared of anything. There wasn't anything hesitant about Vanderbilt tonight. They attacked it and almost got tennis.
It got a little dicey late.
It did late.
That far, but they were
going
they built
into
enough margin
it
to win it.
Yeah. And that was tense. Didn't score in the last 3:48 of that game, and somehow found a way after the Lanier missed free throw. But either way, glad we could get to you guys tonight. Thank you for all the comments and questions. That's Joey Dwyer. That's Brandon Bigsby. That's Chris Lee. I'm Billy Derrick saying so long from Memorial Gym. Vanderbilt beats Tennessee 76-75, and they got Alabama on Tuesday. So we'll be talking about that, covering that. But thanks for joining, guys, for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.